Welcome back. Movement School NY seeks to cultivate leaders and organizers to fight on behalf of their working class communities through grassroots engagement. Through their work, they've trained public housing tenants to organize and build political power while advocating for NYCHA's Green New Deal. What is that Green New Deal and what will it mean for public housing residents? Joining us now to share more is Ilona Duverge, co-founder and New York City director of Movement School. Hi, Ilona. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on and talk about this Green New Deal for NYCHA, especially in such a critical moment, having a presidential election coming up and also being in the middle of a pandemic.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we'll definitely get into it. Before we start though, for those who are not familiar, can you just tell us a little bit more about Movement School NY and your mission there?
Absolutely. So Movement School honestly came about based on a lot of the different gaps that I was seeing in the current organizing infrastructure that we have, the way that we run campaigns, the people that create the strategy to run campaigns. I got the opportunity to work on a campaign when I was just 19 years old. It was my first campaign ever. I had absolutely no experience, and I started off as a volunteer and then quickly got promoted to be the field director because the consulting firm that we were working with could not find a field director that spoke Spanish. And it was so critical that we found a field director that spoke Spanish because we were running a campaign in a district that was 65% Spanish speaking. And the consulting firm, gave me this quick crash course on the technical backends of how to run a field program and how campaigns are actually ran. And I saw a lot of issues. One being, the way that consulting firms and usual, campaign strategists think about targeting. The current tools that we have right now tend to exclude young people and people of color because we do not fit the modeling. For example, people like me, I'm 23 years old, Latina, I am not considered a highly likely Democratic voter in the current modeling system that we have right now, although I've never missed an election since I've been eligible to vote, right? So when I was taught all of this, I had a lot of questions, for example, why is our target universe, so the people that we're talking to, why are they predominantly older or concentrated in a specific part of the area that is more affluent? Why aren't we talking to Latinos? Our candidate is first generation Dominican American. Why are we doing a robust Latinx outreach? Our candidate is 28 years old. Why are we not doing outreach to the youth? And they looked at me and they laughed. And at that moment, I got so upset because I felt as they were laughing at me. Because here I was 19 years old giving my summer up to work on this campaign for a candidate that I actually, for the first time ever, finally saw myself in, saw that I was represented by this person, was speaking about the issues that were important to me, yet they didn't seem to care. So after that experience, and working on different campaigns from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaign to Alessandra Biaggi, to the other campaigns that I've gotten the honor to work on, I've learned a lot about how this the campaigning system works, and it came to me that, even myself, I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I said Ilona Duverge from Scranton, Pennsylvania shouldn't be running field in the Bronx. I need, Jason Santiago, Ali Kaba, these organizers born and raised here that know this community to be the ones pushing this forward. Oftentimes the way that campaigns are ran is that people, parachute into communities they know nothing about. And then they have this tunnel vision to try to win and end up excluding, again, young people and people of color specifically. So Movement School was created right after we won on AOC's race in 2018, her primary race, as a way to train people from the community and be able to give back the lessons learned and all the tactics and strategies that we implemented on the campaign, to be able to give it back and train the community to do this work. And then after that, now we've been able to grow exponentially, have a couple programs, and been able to train organizers that have now been able to be the campaign staff for candidates like Cori Bush, Marie Newman, Jessica Cisneros, and tons of others across the country and state.
Thank you for sharing, Ilona. Your experience really speaks to the voter suppression that happens in our communities often as well. The fact that, the youth aren't outreached to, that kind of suppresses their vote and doesn't include them in this process that we all should be included in, no? Especially today, Election Day, November 3rd. Ilona, can you tell us, campaigning involves plenty of community interaction. How has your work with Movement School changed due to COVID-19?
Absolutely. So it hasn't changed too much, for the fact that when we were creating Movement School, we wanted to be able to create a program that is accessible. So one that is not only that it is free, there's not a lot of training programs that teach you how to do this work that are free. And also that we wanted to make it accessible for working class people, because that is who we wanted to train up, which means that we decided to create our program to be completely digital and to be in the evenings. So since Movement School's inception, our programs have been completely digital and online, so that people don't feel like they need to be in a physical space because they have work, they have kids, life is crazy these days. So we want to make it as accessible as possible for everyone. So in terms of our programming, it hasn't changed too much, but definitely the urgency to be able to train more people, to be able to do these jobs, to go out there and organize, and especially with the expansion of our work here locally in New York, with our NYCHA program, right? Responding to the humanitarian crisis that is currently happening right now in NYCHA, and is just exacerbated with this pandemic. So it definitely has, it has shooken it up in terms of creating more urgency, but in terms of our programming has been pretty sustainable.
Thank you. Let's get into the situation over at NYCHA, and let's learn about NYCHA's Green New Deal. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? What is it, and what will it mean for NYCHA public housing residents?
Absolutely. So the Green New Deal for public housing is this ambitious plan to decarbonize the entire public housing stock in all of America, while also being able to provide good, high-paying union jobs to public housing tenants. When we talk about the Green New Deal for NYCHA specifically, NYCHA, as some of you may know, is the largest public housing authority in the entire Western Hemisphere. 1 in 15 New Yorkers lives in NYCHA. There are currently 500,000 people that live in NYCHA right now, and 98% people of color. So when we think about, all of the things that we're fighting for right now, especially under this current administration, right? Racial justice and equity, being able to fight for housing as a human right, being able to fight for climate justice. The Green New Deal for NYCHA really encompasses all of those things, and it's for once finally centering the people who are most vulnerable to the systemic oppression. And that is the people that live in public housing. Here in New York, lots of our public housing are on waterfronts. They, any climate disasters that happen, they are the first ones to feel that impact. We see down on the Lower East Side when Sandy hit, a lot of those developments are still in shambles. Tenants in those developments are living with, increased cases of mold and lead, and there hasn't been any rehab to be able to fix those apartments. And especially being in the middle of a pandemic, those conditions just create the perfect storm to be able to quite literally, affect the tenants in a way that affects their health. And especially in a country where we don't have access to, everyone does not have access to healthcare, right? we are quite literally, NYCHA is quite literally facing a humanitarian crisis right now. And no one is doing anything about it. So the Green New Deal for NYCHA specifically would not only decarbonize and retrofit the public housing developments that we currently have right now in NYCHA, but it's also putting back to work the tenants that live in NYCHA to be able to rebuild public housing in a dignified way. And I think the most important piece to this all is that this legislation was written with public housing tenants every step of the way. And I want to applaud Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders, who allowed us, who have this vision of how legislation should be created, and that it should be created from the bottom up with those who are mostly impacted. So every single bit of this plan was crafted by public housing tenants. So it is preserving public housing, which is Section 9, being able to expand the Tenant Opportunities Program to be able to invest in the people that work in, that live in public housing. And on top of that, creating, a sustainable and healthy living condition to be able to give them a fighting chance at success. So the Green New Deal for NYCHA is so critical, not only for the half a million people that live in NYCHA right now, but also as a means to get us out of this pandemic, and to be able to fight back against the humanitarian crisis happening right now in NYCHA.
How can people make a change and get this Green New Deal up and running through their votes, especially, Ilona? Can you just share that before we go? And also, how can they join in the fight for Green New Deal in public housing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, Movement School, we have the Reclaim program, which we work with public housing tenants to teach them and give them the tools and the skills that they need to organize within their developments and be able to support their leadership in doing this. And in this program, we obviously talk a lot about the Green New Deal. We talk about NYCHA specific issues, and also what's so unique about NYCHA specifically is that the tenants at NYCHA, it's not necessarily, people call it tenant organizing, but the tenants in NYCHA have such a unique position because they're public housing tenants, they're under Section 9, which means that they have a slew of federal rights that are granted to them that normal tenants do not have, which means that they have so much power that I don't even think tenants realize. And something that I always express to tenants is saying that NYCHA has an immense amount of political capital. They could literally decide who the next mayor will be. They can decide who the next governor will be. They can decide any candidate up and down the ballot because New York City is so saturated with public housing. So, I see public housing as like this sleeping giant. And it's finally starting to wake up and realize that the tenants actually have the power. Because again, something that I always mention is, the original idea of public housing was to be able to build up the middle class. But what happened was that the disinvestment from our federal government over the years has left it in shambles in its current condition. But in reality, tenants have so much power to be able to fight back against this, right? But obviously our government does a really good job at trying to bully us into thinking that we do not have that power. So something that we really focus on is trying to instill that power and empower NYCHA tenants to realize that they do have this power, they can come out on top, and they can advocate for a better life for them and their kids and their families. So in terms of, what's going to be happening today with the election, I'm not afraid to say that Biden was not my first choice. However, I do see this moment to be incredible. It's so critical in the course of our future for this country. And I think that Biden will at least listened to activists, listened to organizers on the ground, and has at least made an effort to try to incorporate some of our biggest issues. And especially one testament to that was, the creation of the Biden-Bernie task force, and where they were able to craft together Biden's climate plan. So, I will be voting for Joe Biden on the Working Families Party line. That's also incredibly important that we save the Working Families Party line. And I think that definitely NYCHA tenants, again, need to realize that they truly have this political power, and they are the ones in, the driver's seat when it comes to the future that they want to have for public housing.
Thank you so much, Ilona, for your time today. I wish we had more time to delve more into this important topic, but thank you. Thank you again.
Of course.
Folks, you can follow at MVMT School on social media and visit movementschool.us to find out more about NYCHA's Green New Deal and all the movements happening at Movement School. We'll be right back.